The thoughts and opinions are those of each individual voice on the podcast and do not necessarily represent the policies of Cedar Valley High School.
Welcome, Aviators Airwaves, the official podcast of Cedar Valley High School, where we keep you updated on everything in the halls, on the field, and the classrooms, and beyond. I'm Curtis Twitchell, and I'll be hosting today until Ms. Courtney Johnson returns, and we are here to spotlight the stories, achievements, and events that make CV soar. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and share the show to your fellow aviators. If you got a story, a shout out, or an event we should cover, reach out. This is your podcast after all. Before we jump in, let's go around and introduce ourselves. On the mic with us today are
Jessica Pedersen.
Kenny Hinton.
All right, and again, I'm Curtis Twitchell. So, let's taxi down to the runway and take off with this week's stories and news. So, today's big questions we have. You guys are both from our math department. We kind of wanted to ask you guys some introductory questions. For example, we want to talk about the new grading system we have in secondary 2 going on to standard-based grading, and how is that different from traditional grading? Can you guys tell us about that?
Well, to start off, our standards-based grading is honestly there to help students to represent their knowledge and not so much on what they can do. So our traditional based grading currently tests on how many problems a student can do correctly, and also if they can do the procedural stuff.
So we decided to switch this up, kind of going away from just like percents and point gathering to more of a system where we have you're rewarded for knowing things, not for doing grunt work and a bunch of homework assignments that you don't really think about or process. So we shifted it towards this kind of more system where we look at, hey, can you do this thing? Cool. You get points for that. Can you not do this thing? Well, let's work on it so that we can kind of remediate and fix that.
That's awesome. All right. And what kind of really made the team decide to kind of shift to standards-based grading in the classroom?
We made this shift because we were looking at it and a lot of grades didn't seem to match up with what students know, as well as how many times have you as a student or ever heard a student say, oh, we learned that last week, I don't need to remember it anymore, or that's from last chapter. That's kind of problematic, especially in math where it builds off of itself. So we decided to switch to something where we could keep track of it and kind of hold students accountable longer.
Was this an easy shift for the team?
No. So this took a lot of hours and several days to discuss and work through. We actually have spent the last 3 years trying to come to where we can have clear standards picked out to where our problems are more aligned to a standard and it's not just being supportive to our standard. And then also to help us more clearly be able to communicate with parents and students on what they need to know and what they need to learn before the end of term. So it took a lot of conversations and discussion because we were more concerned about what this will do to our students and making sure that it would be beneficial for them and that it would be a good move and change. And so that way they can have the opportunity to grow in knowledge and also have opportunities to show what they do know, truly know, instead of just based on can they get a problem right.
I remember going up to some of you guys' meetings on those, and you guys got into some pretty fun discussions during that time. It got kind of heated a few times. You guys are still pretty good together, right?
Yeah. Me and Mr. Nordyke are friends. Even though it doesn't sound like it sometimes when we meet, he's cool with it.
Awesome. And a lot of people are kind of go when they look at the system, because I remember when I first started looking at standard-based grading, I had a hard time understanding like the purpose of it because I was so stuck in that traditional grading type. Can you help us understand why change what we've been working on already? Like what was like the big push to make that change?
So kind of like I said earlier, when you look at traditional grading, which is that 100-point scale where you get an A through an F, it doesn't really tell you anything, especially when we start weighting categories. Tests are worth this many percentages, homeworks are worth this many percentages. You start diluting it with this more, well, how many points do I need to gather to pass the class? So it doesn't really work. There's a lot of evidence that's research-based. There's a lot of evidence that's kind of story-based. Again, I go back to the how many times have you been like, well, I don't need to know this because we did it last unit. Or when you're looking at, okay, it's the end of the term, how many points do I need to get myself to that A or that B or that C or whatever is your goal grade? Some of you, it's a D. I don't know. Sorry. When we look at it, we changed it because we wanted a grade that meant something. A grade that was very clearly, you know how to do these 4 skills or these 3 skills or however many skills we decided we needed. I think it's 16 over the year.
Yes.
Which, when I say 16 for an entire year, that's how many skills. That seems manageable. But we wanted our grade to mean you can do these things, not you can work hard. Which, not that it doesn't take hard work to know those things, but we want their grade to be measured based on what they know and not what they, think they did.
So for an example, we have students that are in our class that are there every day. They put in their full effort. They're working. They do know part of the standard, but they may not be able to get it fully correct. So these students usually end up failing our class with a traditional base grading system because they are not able to get over 50% of the problems correct on a test. So by switching to the standards-based grading, we are actually rewarding students for what they know. So if they can start it, then we know that they have a good foundation and that we can add upon that and give them the necessary supports to help them improve and to learn more on that standard.
Plus, like she said, those students that are working that hard, generally speaking, we've shortened our tests and our exams to just a few questions so that it's much more, okay, you don't need to perform this 100 times. You need to perform it once for me. But you're going to need to perform it once for me a couple times throughout the term. And your grade's going to grow and evolve as you do in your knowledge.
That's awesome. Do you feel like that's been like more supportive for your students and yourselves? Like to gather that information?
For our students, I feel it has been very beneficial. We already have had students who have come into our classrooms. Unfortunately, we are the last class they need for graduation. And so they already have a mindset of, oh, it's math, I'm going to fail. Why even try? So we already have some of these students who have taken the formative for the first time, and they have this, they're elated and they're excited because they've actually passed a test. So as we passed them back, we had students actually rejoicing, I actually passed. I got a 1, I got a D, which honestly has helped encourage them to even try more and to put more effort into it because they are seeing the reward for what they have done, because we're only giving students points for showing us what they know, not based off of what they've done wrong.
So you feel like you're really developing that growth mindset for your students then?
Yes. And then even for our students who already understand, let's say they got a 3 or a 4 on it, they still are coming back and asking questions on how can I do this better? Or is there some way I can, I found that this part of my formative was incorrect, but I still got a 3. I want to know how I can change that and what I missed. So it's working for both extremes, those who are always struggled in math, giving them that encouragement to try and do better. And then it's also having our higher level students start thinking about how they can increase their knowledge and to be able to apply it to other things.
Very nice. So can you walk us through what it kind of looks like in your classroom and how this kind of fits into your every kind of day situation?
So what it looks like is each term we have 4 standards. These standards have already been picked and they are closely aligned, so they build off of one another. In the classroom, we will have homework, which is practice, and it's to help prepare students for the formative. So they will have those assignments. Most of the formatives have about 3 assignments. So for our first one, we did proving parallel lines. Anyways, the students had those assignments, and then we do what's called a scrimmage. The scrimmage is not a data point. It's not something we take and record as being towards the student's final grade. It's actually just tool for them to use to know where they are at with that standard so they can get quick, instant feedback and also know what they may still need to get help on or come ask a teacher to receive assistance with before a formative. After they take that scrimmage, they can take that information back, study some more. Then we have our formative. Our formative, as was mentioned before, is about 3 to 5 questions. This is to help with some of our students with their test anxiety so they can hopefully be less stressful because it's just a quick way to find where students are at. And that's done in class. And then after the formative, we can do what's called a retake for that formative. There are some steps and things that we have to do before we can take a retake. And that is the students need to have their 3 assignments done for that formative at 100% completed, not as a percentage, but 100% completed. And then they will do the corrections on their formative. And then they'll come back to the teachers for some practice problems. And then as a teacher, we will make sure that they clearly understand what they've missed and that they are ready for a retake before giving them that retake. Nice part is the retake, there is no deadline on it. It just needs to be completed before end of term. But then we have other multiple ways that we check for understanding throughout the term and where students can show us proficiency, and that is with our extensions, which are used to help students apply what they know to a real world situation. So that provides our students who understand the standard to push them a little farther ahead. And then also it helps those who are still learning be exposed to using the content that they've learned in a real world application. And then after our extension, we have, depending on where the standard is for standard 1, we'll have a midterm. The midterm tests on the first 2 standards of the term, just another check-in to see where they're at because we want them to retain what they know. And then at the end of term, we have a final. But then we take all of these data points that we have for each standard, which then creates their final score for that standard.
So during each of these tests, you're testing every standard in each test or just a couple of them?
So for the formative, we just test 1 standard. It is strictly 1. For the midterm, we'll be testing on the first 2 standards that we've learned, and then the final will be the 4 standards for the term.
Okay.
But formatives and extensions are basic, I shouldn't say basically, they are aligned to that standard.
So they all kind of line up together and help kind of support each other then?
Correct.
Standards.
So like standard 1, we're doing proofs with parallel lines. Well, we need to know that setup and know those definitions to help us go into proving congruency with triangles, which is our second standard.
So you have something to add to that?
No.
Okay. So how does homework fit in all this? Like if you're doing are you just testing all the time in class? Like does homework fit in at all?
Got this one.
Okay.
So homework is still part of your grade. It's only 5%. It's very minimal, very tiny.
It's very small.
Yeah. It's mostly designed to kind of help you get a bump maybe to that next letter grade, as opposed to, dropping you down and hurting your grade. The biggest reason for homework is practice makes perfect. I don't know how many professional athletes out there don't practice. I don't think any, just a guess. I'm not a sports guy, but I'm just going to go out there and guess that. You got to practice to be better at it. So homework is more for you to study and to improve your skills. Because again, we've used the word standard a lot. And I realize we never defined that. We should probably define that. A standard is a skill. It's a specific thing that the state has decided is what secondary 2 is all about. So we've picked skills. We've picked certain things that you need practice with. And that's what homework's for. And those certain skills are what we test and we assess on. So yes, it does feel like we do assess a lot, but again, they're 2 to 3 questions at a time. It's 15 minutes. If you're feeling over-tested, it's probably because you're staring at the paper and not writing on the paper.
I've done that a few times.
Yep.
All right. So if the homework is so small, so you're saying like if a student didn't do any homework at all and they still pulled like 3s on these standards,
They'd have a B.
They'd have a B. Okay. Very nice. Okay. So how does the feedback work on these like for you? Like if it's not like on the homework, so you're focusing on those standards, like what kind of feedback do they get and how does it help them take ownership?
So feedback, we've designed as a team, because this is a team effort. That's one thing that's actually really important that we also neglected earlier when we were talking about switching to standards-based, is one of our big goals for this was to make it so that no matter who you took, if you walked into my class, or if you talked in Mrs. Pedersen's class, or Mr. Nordike's class, or Mr. Benight's class, doesn't matter, your grade would be identical.
I'm not going to get away from it then.
Yeah, you're not going to get away from it. And it wasn't just so much making sure you didn't go away from it as much as to make sure that no one fell through the cracks. No one disappeared.
So you have a united front to kind of,
Yeah.
very nice.
And so what we did with that united front is we built rubrics. We built a rubric being just a standard way to grade, where all of us grade on the exact same scaling. We grade on the exact same questions, the exact same way, as best as we can. We're still human. And some of us are nicer than others. But anyways, so we have those rubrics, and they do say what you did or didn't do in order to earn the score that you earned, because your score is earned, it's not given. So that's kind of the feedback. And then we also can make notes and write in them to kind of add to that feedback. So that's your primary way of getting feedback, is looking at those rubrics and seeing, okay, I didn't do this. Like, for example, on the first formative that we handed out, it was, you gave, so many questions or statements correctly, and so many incorrect statements, things like that. And that's kind of our primary means of feedback. There's also the scrimmage that Mrs. Pedersen talked about, where it's your opportunity to know before you take your first formative what you did and didn't do. Those are all excellent sources of feedback. And then, of course, if you ask me, I'll always tell you my opinion.
Well, have you guys seen any any current responses to this by students, like a positive feedback from them yet, or anything that's happened so far? Kind of like a motivation or confidence boost you've seen already?
For students, I have seen them come back, especially those that got their pass for that first one. They have come back and have asked for help, knowing, okay, I don't know how to set this up. And so we'll be able to go from there and help them through those. One thing we didn't mention is that everything that we test them on or assess them for the standards is all done on paper. So we can actually see students thinking. So for this first standard for proving parallel lines, we don't focus on the algebra and solving for a missing variable as much as, do they know how to set it up, and do they know why they're setting it up the way they are? So honestly, with those rubrics, they're able to go through and see, okay, I have the correct setup, but there was one piece I was missing, which is the why part. And so then we're able to go through those definitions and theorems with them, and it helped them understand the reason behind why they are doing what they are doing.
Very nice. And so was this a pretty big challenge for your whole team to kind of get to this point? You said you took 3 years to put it together. I've seen some of those wonderful collaboration meetings. What do you think was the biggest challenge for you as a team to make this shift?
So one of the biggest challenges was, like you said earlier, shifting that mindset from, well, what's wrong with traditional grading? That was one big challenge. And then the other biggest challenge was agreeing on what was essential. What was the most important thing? Some of us feel different ways about different things, but coming to a cohesive kind of, okay, fine, you get your standard, I get my standard, but a little bit more in support of each other than that. Finding that, what is the bare minimum? Not bare minimum is the wrong word. What is essential for you to know to say that you earn secondary 2 credit? That was probably the hardest part, and took one of the longest times, was getting that to happen.
You're both nodding your heads, I can see.
Yeah. And then doing it in such a way that we could collect data and talk to each other about how our classes are doing was also quite challenging.
Yeah, it was also, how do we give this information to parents and students so it's clearly represented?
Yes.
Has been quite difficult because Skyward does not work with standards-based nicely.
Yes.
So as we're entering in students' grades, percentages and letters are automated through Skyward, which have nothing to do with what we're putting in. And then giving our subgrouping so we can have all of standard 1 together We had to use the categories and subtitles that they had
Yes.
and force it into a system to make it work for what we have. So that's been more.
Yeah, that has
a
been
chore.
our recent challenge, is getting a system that was designed inherently to not do what we want it to do what we want it to do.
Sounds like you guys are doing a lot more work than you're used to on this.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's worth it with all the extra work you're doing?
Honestly, I do feel it's worth it because it's worth the effort for our students. It's giving our students a better understanding of what they need to know, what they need to learn, instead of just, this is what I need to do. And so I think that's the big thing. And what I would like to see have happen is, instead of maybe parents asking their student of what do you need to do tonight, is switching it around and focusing it on asking your student on what they need to know or what they need to learn by the end of the term. So we can encourage a growth mindset and look for that, where students are getting excited, maybe not super excited. I don't know. Math is cool, right?
Definitely.
But at
Physics
least
is better.
This is what the math teacher says.
at least encourage them and give them the encouragement to try their best and to put forth effort.
I would definitely agree that it's worth it. The clarity in grading is something that's so important when taking ownership of your own grades and your own learning. If you don't know what you don't know, it's really hard to take ownership of that. And so even though it's a bunch of work for us, I would say that the fact that it's clearer to the students, we hope, what they don't know and what they need to ask about is so worth it.
Nice. So if you could just talk to the parents, like, what is one thing you'd want to tell the parents, like, you think would be the most important thing for them to do, like, in support of this entire system?
I think that goes back to what I said previously, is having parents focus on the question of not what do you need to do, but what do you need to learn, or what do you need to know to pass off a standard. Because we want it to be not so much a checklist of jumping through a hoop, but actually having the student learn and take that knowledge. Because what we are hoping for in the long run is that this is going to help increase their knowledge, so they'll have higher ACT scores. So they will have more of an opportunity to be competitive with college entrance exams, because they'll actually know the material and not just have it temporarily with what they need to do for the term.
Not just a quick regurgitate what they just quickly learned type of thing.
Yes.
They actually had the idea. Nice. Okay. Well, we're coming here to a close now. We only got a few more minutes left. So I just got one last question for you guys here. What excites you the most about where standard-based grading can take our students in the future? Like, what do you think what kind of future do you think this has for us?
So it's actually really interesting. I've done a lot of reading on different things when it comes to standards-based grading and other types of grading systems. And one of the perks is, if you can find a way to guarantee students retain, which is one of our goals, they're more likely to succeed in the next year. And like I said earlier, mathematics very much builds upon itself. So if you have those fundamental building blocks from our class, then next year when you take secondary 3, because you will take secondary 3, it will improve your, I guess, chances in that class. And because you've taken secondary 3, you love math now, you're more likely to continue taking more math classes. And that's just proven to, first off, increase your average salary. And also, I mean, more math is good math.
Yeah, and I think it also just, honestly, seeing our students have the opportunity to go to college and be able to continue and do well in whatever they choose to do for their future.
Very nice. So now I just got to ask this one last thing, because I know it's not on the list here that we've been practicing a little bit, but I got to ask, would you guys be willing to help other teams learn how to do this? I'm going to put you on the spot. Sorry.
That's really mean, Mr. Twitchell. Because you know what I want to say.
Oh, I know what you want
Yeah.
to say.
So I'm going to let my boss say it.
Honestly,
I put you on the spot. I know.
It is. Well, the thing is honestly, when it comes down to it, I don't mind sharing what we've done. I don't mind sharing our experiences, but it really comes down to the team.
I like that response. That is
Because
good.
honestly, the team has to all be in. And that's what we found out.
Nice.
We could not continue forward if only part of us were in. And so that's why it took us so long, is because we all had to commit to do this for our students, for their best interest. And we all had to be on the same page, because it does not work if you are all not in agreement to it.
I would definitely agree with her on that. Like, we can't do anything they don't want. So sure, they can look at all of our documents, but if they don't want it, it's not going to matter.
And we can share what we've done.
Yeah, of course.
But
That is awesome. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you guys for coming in and speaking with us. If you guys want to keep listening on to this, maybe we'll be having another podcast here later coming this next week. And you guys have a wonderful time. And remember, it is now clear skies ahead.